We are in the business of presenting the news, but also doing it in a compelling and interesting way.
President saying he makes no apologies for taking down that balloon.
After an American plane mistakenly taxied across the same runway.
A real sense of how prevalent this problem is.
Take a look at U.S. equity futures at this hour. Got some green on the screen.
We are constantly competing for viewers' attention. Having a graphic up there can just break up the talking heads. You're trying to tell a story on TV, you have a limited amount of time to tell that story. There are various ways you can use graphics. First of all, you have to make sure that you understand the story. And you also should consult with the reporter or the field producer who's out in the field working on that story. You've got to make sure that you're all on board on the same page. Then you've got to think about ways to tell that story. After you kind of decide which way to go, you then basically put together an order for the graphic artists and kind of give them your vision. Here are some of my best practices as far as putting together a graphic. If there are some really complex items that you're trying to explain, you can sometimes put it in bullet points and put the key factoids, and that will really help make it concise, offer some context. You want to make sure that the text that you have on the screen is clear, concise, and minimal. You want to make sure that you have no spelling errors, you're accurate. Those things are critically important. You want to make sure the facts are right. You want to make sure you have the sourcing correct. You can use different colors for the text to emphasize an important point that you want to really make sure that the viewer understands, or you can bold the point, and also that you're using active words to really make it compelling and interesting. Pictures should relate to the text that you have on the screen. You just want to keep it simple. Less is more. It just has a bigger impact when you keep things simple and makes it easier for the viewer to kind of comprehend and digest. We have at MSNBC and NBC these big studios that have walls and big monitors to help explain the stories. Another way you can use graphics is by an animation. An animation sometimes takes a little bit longer for an artist to put together. Graphics play an important part in helping someone who, say, is hearing impaired. They may not be able to get all the closed captioning, but they can see a graphic that's on the screen that explains what the story of the day is. They can see the headlines. They can see some important numbers about the economy. So that is important to also take into consideration when you're putting graphics together. One example of when I used graphic to really explain a story was we were talking about people in the Trump world. It was a New York Times article, and it was very complex to understand. So I just wrote down the names, and then I kind of created like a little web. I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a very rudimentary, basic drawing. I gave it to the graphic artist and said, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. They were able to work out this great graphic, and we used this to tell the story, and it really was compelling. We actually had the New York Times reporter on after we explained all that, and the reporter mentioned to the anchor, he's like, oh, I wish we had thought of that. I was like, okay, well, I guess mission accomplished. As far as the future of graphics, one thing that really jumps out at me is augmented reality. It's been used in NBC News for election night coverage. We used it for the Artemis launch, and we had an anchor actually like standing in this virtual rocket telling the story. And so when you look to the future, you're going to see a lot more of that in TV news. But as the technology kind of catches up a little bit, it'll become a lot faster and easier. And then pretty soon, I would imagine we're going to see these augmented reality graphics almost on a daily basis. My favorite part of graphics is seeing the final product. You'll see something that's not on any other show, and they're like, oh, people kind of stop and take notice. That to me was always very satisfying. Somebody will say to me, wow, why didn't I think of that? That was really interesting. I'm going to do that next time. I hope it was also something that the viewer at home is taking notice and help them understand and also kind of entertain them in some way.